This is.
Just chilling, waiting for a chance to respond. That's all.
I don't know why
All
the
right.
channel is doing this. I honestly couldn't tell you why the channel does this. It seems to be the channel specific thing because, like I said, I
I
streamed
can't
for
see a problem from
hours.
my end, to be honest. I don't know what the hold up is. It seems to be working, but I am watching it on the link that I was given on what's it called, vMix call. I'm not watching it
Well,
on YouTube.
you will definitely
Yeah.
see it on the VMix call. That's the point. It's YouTube that's the problem right now.
Okay.
It's and
Yeah,
people are saying it's back now,
all
which
right.
I can't
Yeah, I
find
can.
it, but I'll take their word for it. So let's continue as if we were still here, Bob.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for making your presentations. You both covered a large number of points. Now, our point is that we're going to have a rebuttal. I've been taking notes for both of your presentations, and I'm going to be having a look and seeing whether or not, Jesus, you address Constable's points, and Constable, you address Jesus's points. This is not really the time to bring up additional information. That'll be for the later time. Now, one of the things that I noted that you both discussed was gravity. Now, I would like you guys to have a look at this right here and address this when you address each other's points. Do you see Douglas MacArthur here? Whoop.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Do you see him now?
Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
You see when I rotate my iPad back, he goes back upright again?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps both of you can discuss why that happens. So,
Well, it
Perhaps.
seems like a little bit of a distraction there, but I would say that it's probably due to electronics having something similar to, say, a mercury switch in there, which is quite
okay.
simply as you adjust it, it triggers one side to another. I'm no phone expert, but that would be an
All
easy
right.
explanation for how
So
something
flat Earth.
works.
All right. So flat Earth Jesus, I think that we'll give you the first 10 minutes to rebut Constable's points, and then Constable, let's have you rebut his. So flat Earth Jesus, when you go ahead and are ready, you can start.
Okay, I'm ready to start. So the first one he brought up was about the atmosphere and the various gradients of gas pressure inside an enclosed atmosphere, or if it's enclosed for that matter. Well, I sort of explained that there is possibly a solid barrier of, say, something like frozen helium or hydrogen or both well above us that form stretches out like a tarpaulin and it creates a firmament. And basically, all the various gases then that are beneath that level have various gradients of their own mass or their own density. And therefore, oxygen being slightly heavier than some of the others will have a higher gradient or higher quantity of it nearer to sea level. And as you get higher and higher, where there's far less trees and so on to actually produce the oxygen, well, you're not going to find that there is as much. So it's pretty simple the way you have various gradients of air pressure. It's basically as you go higher, there's less air above you pushing down. When you're down lower, there's more air pushing down. So that's basically your air pressure explained, even in an enclosed system. Next, he talked about stars. And I suggest that if you believe that star trails are caused by the fact that we're on the outside surface of a spinning ball, perhaps you could attach a little camera to a spinning ball, one pointing towards your so-called North Pole, which would be, the actual place directly above the spin, another one pointing down towards the south, and show us just exactly how this camera can do it 2 times at a time, fix on a fixed point in the distance, and everything else will make perfect circles around it. You'd find that the further you are towards the equator, that this will get more and more elliptical, and yet it seems wherever you put these cameras, they still always make perfect circles, which really generally is only showing us that it's the stars themselves which are moving, not the Earth rotating to create such an effect. Um, and as I said with my opening point, you don't look to the lights in the ceiling to determine the shape of the floor. His third one was about moon phases. Well, they're quite simply explained over a flat Earth because we have a moon and a sun. And the moon, to me, is a physical object. The sun is an apparition. I think it's some sort of black hole type of sun which the light emanates from. And because it propagates in the atmosphere, that's how we see the sun, because we see it through the atmosphere. It's the atmospheric gases themselves which light up. But the moon is sufficiently high enough up that the sun never sets on it. And because it takes 50 minutes approximately longer each day to go around us once, the side that's fully lit by the sun is getting nearer to the sun after the full moon phase. So you get your full moon phase when they're directly opposite one another, and that's when we see it fully lit, fully illuminated. As it gets nearer to the sun, we see less and less of the lit side, and that creates the phases. When it's right near the sun, that's the new moon phase. The unlit portion of the moon in the daytime never shines through the atmosphere. That's because it's not bright enough to shine through the glowing gases, which glow blue light through the daytime, and then they seep into the other various neon colours as the sun recedes further away from us. So when the moon is so close to the sun, the lit side in the daytime is completely facing away from us, and that's why it's invisible to us. So that's your new moon explained. Occasionally it gets so perfectly aligned it eclipses the sun, so we've got a solar eclipse. So moon phases are quite logically explained when you understand that 50-minute daily difference, and you can see it for yourself quite logically. Fourthly, you mentioned the Coriolis effect and hurricanes. That is also easily explained over a stationary planar Earth because it's the sun itself which is going around the Earth. It takes 24 hours to get back to where it started again, so wherever it is the local noon. Now, just like a boat going through water creates a wake with vortices spiraling off either side, the sun is doing the same thing in our atmosphere, just creating a lot of heat, and as it moves across, these vortices spin off, and occasionally they form great storm cells, such as hurricanes, for example, and occasionally they will cross over to the wrong side of the equator. It does occasionally happen, but by the next day, as the sun comes back around again, it sort of realigns them again. So that's about the only thing the Coriolis effect ever affects is storm cells, because they're on the opposite sides of the equator. When he mentions about snipers taking account for it, that is completely false. It's been debunked multiple times. You've basically got rifles, barrels, which are rifled a particular direction. So it puts a bit of a spin on the projectile. Eventually that spin is going to affect it as it reaches a certain distance, like over a mile or so. But for most intents and purposes, there's no Coriolis effect ever having to be taken account by snipers. And if there was, then why the hell does it affect a speeding bullet, but never affects an aeroplane only going about 500 miles per hour? That doesn't make any sense. Aeroplanes never have to take into account any sort of motion of the Earth. They can land in any direction. So I think we can rule that one out as well. Next, we talked about angular size of sun. Well, the angular size of the sun is, as I said, it's an apparition created by the atmosphere and the way the viewer views it. And when we view the sun, because of distance and height perspective, we see it appear to go in what we call this big pyramid line. This is what the Freemasonic symbol is all about. It shows the all-seeing eye, which is the Son of God, Lucifer. It all goes back to sun worship. This is how their symbol shows. You've got your path of the sun, and at the bottom, what do we have? It's called a set square. We're sitting at the very bottom, and we see the ground rising up to eye level away from us, and that's called a set square because the sun sets at that particular place to our view. But in reality, this line's parallel and this line is parallel, but we see it as this because that's how perspective works. So the angle we see the sun going up, as it gets further away through that atmosphere, the size itself won't change to our point of view because it is actually appearing much further away when it's above us, and it's still the same height when it's setting and being obscured by the set square below us. Lake Pontchartrain, I forget what his point was with that one, but I did have an image of that coming up later on in my slideshow, which hopefully we'll get to later on. That picture is showed from space, 65 miles up. It's just on a slant. It didn't look curved whatsoever. And as we all know, with certain cameras, depending on the size of the I don't know if it's not the aperture, it's the lens or whatever, sometimes on a wide angle field of view, it will distort the image, especially in, say, a fisheye lens. We can definitely see the distortion in that. It goes concave, convex, and back and forwards as it goes up and down in the film, if you're filming it. So the picture doesn't really show anything of any evidence. It talks about the speed of rotations per day, once per day. If you had a rope that was 4,000 miles long, shorten it a bit if you wish, but that's about roughly the radius of the Earth. If you were spinning that around once per day, the speed you are going is going to be about twice the speed of the average cruising speed of a passenger airliner. You'll be going about 1,040 miles per hour, and you think you won't feel that? Further, the Earth is also orbiting the sun. So it is traveling across at 66,600 miles per hour while it's spinning. So half the planet in your heliocentric belief is going backwards relative to the forward motion. The other side is going forwards. So there is a constant acceleration and deceleration happening on the surface all the time. You're going from a maximum speed of Mach 88 to a minimum speed of Mach 84, while the whole planet as an average is moving about Mach 86. So that Mach 4 difference is something you would definitely feel. Even the fastest jet aeroplanes don't even go Mach 4 most of the time. I think Mach 3 is about the fastest they ever reach. The next one, your last one actually was gravity and rate of motion through, it is the rate of motion through the medium of air. The acceleration force is only because air offers so little resistance that, yes, a thing of mass may accelerate as it drops, seeking for a place to have resistance or a buoyant force to arrest it. Until that, it will just keep on falling and accelerating at a certain speed until it reaches terminal velocity, but it's only because it's falling through the density of the medium of air. There's nothing more to it. If you didn't pick it up and put it up high and drop it in the first place, it would stay at rest. An object at rest remains at rest until another force is acted upon it. The only force, it's not a fictional gravitational force, it was picking it up in the first place and then allowing it to go back to its place of rest. And then lastly of all, you talk about models. When it comes to the reality of this Earth we live upon, there is no model because everything exists at the scale it exists. The atmosphere exists at that scale. The distances exist at that scale. That's how they work. So if you want a model, step outside and have a look, see the lack of motion, see the stars are moving, see the sun and the moon are moving. That's your model. The model is reality. You cannot scale it down to some little toy trinket in a classroom and say this is how it works, because it doesn't. If you try to replicate a glass of water in a vacuum chamber, you will see how rapidly the water turns into a gas. It boils instantly. It tries to equalize with the outside air pressure. It exists the way it exists because of the way reality exists. Finished. Finished.
Nicely done. You want to catch your breath, and then Constable, it's your turn. Ready?
Count me down, Professor.
Now remember, you're going to be addressing his points.
A list of what I want to talk
3,
about.
2, 1, go.
First of all, Dave, could you pull back up my slide about the 1946 35 millimeter image again? I want to address that first. Now, first of all, I just want to ask you something. Given the angle that this image was taken and the 35 millimeter film, and by the way, I would love for you to show me at what point fisheye lenses were used during the age of film. You can see that it's only 65 miles up, and that's, while curve might be minute, it is there. Again, you got to remember, this is 35 millimeter film. No CGI, no nothing. I don't remember anything about fisheye lenses. The next point I want to talk about is a model. When we talk about models, we're not talking about a little toy globe or ball or anything. We're talking about the collective of mathematics, data, and presentable physical evidence, i.e. reality. You presented no maths, no physics. You presented multiple artist renditions of the infinite plane, but nothing demonstrable, Mr. Thatcher. And frankly, that is unbelievably disappointing on your end. I present to you a model that we constantly use for meteorology, aeronautic, and nautical transportation, and you have presented nothing of any merit with any of the artist renditions that I hesitate to call models on your end. Secondly, when you're complaining about the speed with your talk about the rope, keep in mind about this whole speed thing is that the law of conservation of angular momentum is a actual thing. As in, we are moving with the planet. I say again, we are moving with it, as long as everything in it. The best analogy I can come up with, and the best one I've heard, is if you're in a car going at a constant rate of, say, 40 or 50 miles per hour, you're not going to feel that constant speed unless you suddenly speed up the car to 60 miles per hour or slow down to 40 miles per hour. It's not speed we feel, it's acceleration. Second, you talk about just going outside and feeling, hey, it looks flat to me. Human senses are incredibly infallible. We cannot pick up scent nearly as well as, say, a bloodhound can. We cannot see anything along the electromagnetic spectrum outside of visible light. We cannot see UV radiation. We cannot see waves. We can only see within the visible light spectrum. Second, you provided no actual means of, in any way, outright replacing the actual law of angular perspective at any point, only your assertions. And next, you provided no positive evidence that the sun is not any form a physical object, and rather some sort of entity. What else did you say? You did not in any ways address my talk about the artillery. I was talking about artillery in my slide, specifically. Hang on, let me just pull it back.
Can I interrupt for a second here, if you don't mind?
Sadly,
I thought you were supposed to be addressing what I opened with.
Hold on. He is actually going down a few of your points right here, and he hasn't strayed from.
Yeah, but not my
yet.
opening points. If you could pause for a moment, he's not addressing my opening points, he's addressing my rebuttal. What about my opening points that I made? I thought that's what he's supposed to be addressing first, not my rebuttal.
I might not have. If I wasn't, then
the only one that I have. No, I don't really have anything that was not in your.
This is what I just said, but not what I said to open with.
I've got the notes of your opening points right here. All right.
Yeah,
let's
and he's
let
not
him
addressing
go ahead
any
and
of them.
continue right now.
All right.
Well, he's addressed some of the speeds. He's addressed. No, go ahead and let him continue. I'm keeping track on these notes here.
All right. Maybe I'll just skip the artillery piece. I'll save that for my open back and forth. I'll just go to the angular sides of the sun. Once again, you did not provide any form of positive evidence to rebuttal my, like, again, we have measured the sun with a solar filter via measuring its emittance of light. And we've also taken its angular size and tracked its movement throughout the sky. Again, as far as gravity goes, I once again point out that buoyancy force accounts for gravity. What other points? Let me just double check. Your claim about once you go flat, you never go back. This is a good time to tell you that flat Earth here to former flat earthers who have since looked at the evidence to realize that it points more towards the globe Earth model, and have decided to walk away from it, even addressing some of their concerns about the movement's attitude and methods.
Yeah, I'll post a link to my playlist of interview of ex-flat earthers in the chat so everyone can see that.
Water is level. Once again, we go over this whole level is not flat, and not bothering to demonstrate the exact forces of what causes that bubble to move. If you would say buoyancy, I once again point out to buoyancy accounts for gravity. If you would say density is simply a mass of an object over its volume. What else was there? These ice edges. The multiple photos you showed of these ice edges. I await to see any proof that these are not just simply icebergs. And what are there?
Got one more there, Slick.
Oh yeah, his the air pressure. Did I address that one yet? Once again,
Air pressure's not in the
like
opening. Air pressure's not in the opening. Phases of the moons were in the opening.
Okay, so perspective, back. I'm just going through my notes, seeing which one, if I missed anything.
I just told you. You've
water
got
is
most
level.
of them except phases of the moon. You already did that.
Oh, the phases of the moon. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I missed that while I was looking through my notes. So yeah, as far as the moon phases go, Rob, you say multiple times, not here, but you said that the moon is transparent and made out of quartz or glass. But this I gotta say, if the moon really is transparent, how can a transparent object have any form of phases? How can it even have any form of shadow? And I mean, even if you just say, oh, it's just passing through, it would still shine through the entirety of the transparent object. And even we have images of the moon where we actually see shadows along its crater. I believe that is everything. So once again, I relinquish all my time to the moderator.
All right, Bob, back with you.
All right, I'm back. Just reviewing my notes. Looks like that was pretty good. Flat Earth Jesus, you ready to go, my friend?
Sure.
Are we going to go into
right?
just a back and forth now, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, if we
want to
go
put
back to a couple of my
20 minutes
images.
up on the screen, Dave?
Just
How many
remind
did-
me real quick, has
how
Flat
many
Earth
did-
Jesus had an opportunity to respond to make a rebuttal?
Yeah, you did your rebuttal first, didn't you, Ross?
Yeah, he did his
Yeah,
rebuttal.
Yeah,
Ross
yeah.
did his rebuttal
So we're
first, and
now
then
at
I did
45
mine.
minutes. We're at 45 minutes then, I would assume, to finish up just the back and forth, which will be moderated. I've got a couple of quick questions here for you. Flat Earth Jesus, would you be kind enough to address these velocities that you're talking about? I'm wondering why you are concerned about the orbital velocity of the Earth, the velocity of the solar system through the galaxy, and the rotation orbit, or the rotational speed of the Earth. Why do these numbers bother you, and why do you feel that they are in error or argue against the heliocentric model?
Yeah, sure. I think they're absolutely ridiculous, considering that none of them have actually ever been detected. If we think about the speed of the cruising aeroplane going, 500 miles per hour, how the hell does it keep up with the speed of the ground going twice that speed beneath it if it's going against or going with the rate of motion? It would never get to its destination. It would actually be flying backwards at 500 miles per hour. Flight would be literally impossible. And that's just the orbital, the actual spin. The orbital rate of motion at 66,600 miles per hour makes everything else ridiculously impossible. Like the moon, for example, staying a constant distance from us, all due to the attraction of mass as it's in free fall around us. All the satellites, free fall motion around us, they would be literally impossible, because I'd have to accelerate to catch back up with that rate, and then slow down to fall back around us again, then accelerate to get back in front. And that's not even taking into consideration the fact that the sun is going 500,000 miles an hour through the galaxy, and that all these things are going all these speeds, plus their own individual speed. It just does not add up in reality. I mean, to me, it is ludicrous. The only way we could have satellites is if they're some sort of helium device or something floating above where they're not affected by winds. That way they could be geostationary, because the planet or the plane is geostationary. There's no detection of motion. So to me, to believe these things is some massive brainwashing that you've somehow accepted without really giving it critical thought. It makes no sense.
I'm sorry, Ross.
Do you care to respond to that?
Satellites.
Do you care to respond to that, Constable?
Yeah. Ross, I don't care that you think that this is ridiculous. I want you to exactly demonstrate how it's ridiculous. I mean, specific details, how it is absolutely impossible. Again, the importance is the how, because when you factor in the general scale of things mathematically, it proves that it is indeed happening. It is indeed possible, and we are still able to move on with our happy lives. And then I gotta ask you, at what point did I bring up satellites? I only brought up the V2 rocket used to capture that image. Did I ever bring up satellites? I don't remember bringing up satellites. Like, the reason
No,
I
I just
chose
brought them into
that
the discussion because that's just another fact to show how the speeds that the Earth must be moving at have to be ridiculous fiction because they couldn't exist. Just as the moon is a satellite and all the other satellites. If you want some
don't
proof that's
explain
how it can't.
how.
Okay, well, if you want a simple explanation, you're walking down the road, you've got a fly buzzing around your head at a constant distance. As you're walking 5 miles per hour, that means that the fly has to accelerate for about 7 miles per hour to get back in front of you. Then it's to slow down to stay the same distance behind you. Speed up, slow down. Speed up, slow down. A fly might be capable of doing that because you're only walking at 5 miles per hour. But if you suddenly shot off through the air at 100 miles per hour, what sort of speed now is the fly doing to stay that same constant distance from you the whole time? That's just,
Can I just point out
that's
a
just
problem
the
with
three
that?
ball problem, let alone, the sun as well going through the galaxy. So,
Okay, but Ross, I gotta point out the problem with that. Number one, you're not factoring in that the fly also has to fly against the friction of the air. There is no friction in the vacuum of space. Second of all,
with or
again,
without,
scale is a thing. Yes, they're moving very fast, but you also gotta recognize these things are massive as all bloody hell. Scaling is a very important thing. And here's another thing I need to mention. There is no gravitational force pulling that fly in an elliptical orbit. The sun's gravitational pull keeps the Earth in an orbit, an elliptical one at that, in orbit as it's moving across the galaxy. And I can't explain that absolutely perfectly, but
no,
that
nobody
is the
can.
general
It's
what's going
ludicrous.
on. You
It's
can't
absolutely
say
ludicrous, and you have to have dark matter to
it's
explain
ludicrous.
it.
Is ludicrous. Otherwise, an argument from incredulity. I'm only forewarning you about that.
Yeah, well, so you have to have
Secondly, I
dark
want
matter
to
to be
talk
a
about.
greater force than gravity to counteract it, to stop everything from colliding into a singularity. It's just not possible for something to be attracted to something without colliding and becoming one, unless you've got a repellent force as well. Now, if you say that the sun's gravity holds the Earth in place, then why isn't it pulling the moon closer towards it? Why is the moon staying a roughly constant distance from the Earth the whole time if the sun's gravity is also affecting both bodies? It's impossible. It's just too delicate a balance to say that it can happen by sheer chance.
Actually, to address that, it's all a matter of distance. The sun, the Earth is 93 million miles away from the Earth, and that is a distance to keep it within an orbit, which is like its falling speed matches its moving speed, I believe is the best way to describe it. And second of all, the reason why the moon isn't stolen away by the sun's gravitational pull is because it's a lot closer to the Earth's gravitational pull. The sun still has some influence of a gravitational pull on the moon, but the Earth's gravitational pull is stronger because of the distances. And secondly, when you talked about the moon being a satellite, you have made the claim times that the moon is made out of quartz and is filled with either hydrogen or helium. I've actually run down the mathematics to prove how that is impossible, if I may say. First of all,
it might be my
50
connection here, but you're breaking up an awful lot there.
Okay, Constable, I think Flat Earth Jesus brings up a very good point, and I'd like you to address it specifically.
Okay.
And that is the flight speed of a commercial airliner is about 500 miles an hour, and the orbital speed or the rotation speed of the Earth is 1,040 miles per hour, or about 740 miles up by me. How does that affect the flight speed east and west of aircraft, and why?
It doesn't affect it at all because again, relativity. Sure, the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, but the atmosphere and everything on the planet is spinning with it. And due to the friction of the atmosphere on the Earth and gravity, the plane would only be moving at a relativistic speed at 0 if it's landed, but it's still moving at only 500 some miles, still at a relativistic speed to the Earth. I hope I didn't say that in like too confusing way or in a way that didn't make any sense, Dr. Bob.
I don't know. Let's ask Flat Earth Jesus. What do you have to say about that?
It doesn't make any sense to say that the atmosphere is moving with the Earth. I hear people say that the whole time, and yet we have local winds going various directions. You can watch clouds go in 2 different directions. You've got your storm cells going in their big spirals and so forth. To say the whole atmosphere is moving with the Earth is really just the most ludicrous explanation for why planes don't have to account for the motion of the ground beneath them. So
speaking of storms, Ross, you know how they're formed?
As I said, in the wake
in pressure without a container.
Yeah. Well, it's such a large area that, you know, if there was no container, then all of the air would just dissipate into the void. That's the most logical place for it to go. Nature abhors a vacuum. It will try to fill it with whatever's available. So if there's no pressure, nothing containing the air, it is just going to dissipate into the nothingness as you're racing through it at millions of miles per hour.
Ross, a vacuum
All right, I've
is
got
not
a question.
force. Sorry, Dr. Bob, go ahead.
Ross, I have a question. I have a question for you. You live in Australia, right?
Correct.
You ever been in a typhoon?
We get cyclones here, tropical cyclones.
Okay, tropical cyclones. Did you have some warning that that cyclone was on its way to you? You ever see a picture of a cyclone? Okay, great.
I've seen images, computer-generated images.
How long did it take that cyclone to get to you on a planet that, or on an Earth that supposedly is moving at 1,040 miles an hour at the equator? And by the way, what took the picture?
Well, mate, these things travel various speeds. Sometimes they come down the coast towards us. Sometimes they go back up the coast like the last one did. They're all different. They do what they do because the Earth itself obviously isn't moving, and they're obviously not moving at 1,040 miles per hour with them, as well as spinning at roughly a couple of 100 kilometers. I don't know what that would equate to in miles. The things that take them are generally just radar images that are all land-based type of things. There may well be, as I mentioned, some sort of satellite devices up there taking images, which I would suggest once again are some sort of balloon or blimp type of thing, which is way above the atmosphere where there's no wind to propel them around. That's why they are geostationary. But yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly what's taking these images, but mostly it's just radar, which is done radio. Pretty much what all the cell towers do, all GPS is pretty much radio signals. We've just got better devices of detecting these signals now that we can triangulate our position pretty well, ground positioning system. Yeah, the spinning ball model would make no sense. The satellites would be left in our dust if we're moving just at our orbital rate of 67,000 miles an hour. So the stationary planet Earth, everything makes
Constable,
sense.
do you care to respond? Constable, you care to respond?
All right, where do I start with this? Again, I addressed the reason the storms move, again, due to the Coriolis effect, but I haven't heard any formal rebuttal about why, say, a storm in the southern hemisphere cannot just simply cross the equator into the northern. It is not indeed a physical object. Or
Stop a sec. I think the stream's... Oh, no, it's back up. It's fine. It's fine. It was just buffering for a sec, but it's back up.
Flat Earth Jesus, in Australia, where do your winds normally come from? What direction?
It varies on the seasons. In the wintertime, they often come from the west, which is across the continent towards the coast. in the summertime, they generally come from the northeast, which is across the ocean, and it's quite a constant daytime breeze from about 9 in the morning every day. So the summertime is actually quite annoying. Now, winters, where I live in particular, right near the easternmost point of Australia, Cape Byron, our winters are just beautiful and perfect here. You know, we do get the cold westerly sometimes, but the ocean is still lovely to swim in all year round. But yeah, you go a bit further south, those westerlies can be quite bitterly cold, and you can sometimes even get southerlies. So it changes according to the seasons and according to the sun, which I didn't get to address in my opening presentation, but I do have some images which can explain the seasons if you want to take a look at them, and I can explain how seasons work on the flat Earth. If you
Well,
like
in the
to go
United
there.
States, we generally have. In the United States, our winds generally blow from the west to the east pretty consistently. Now, we have storms that come out of the north and such too, but overall, the winds are the westerlies. Why is that?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know the local conditions. I know my own local conditions because this is where I live and experience reality as it is. If you constantly get westerly, that's due to thermal heating.
Can I take a guess at that, Dr. Bob?
Would you care to address that, Constable?
Yeah, my guess would be with something that had to do with the Coriolis effect and the east to west motion of the Earth.
Okay, so you're referring to the concept of the trade winds.
Yeah, that's
Is that correct?
That's yeah.
Are you familiar with
I think,
the trade
am I
winds?
making GE angry here?
Jesus?
I'm sorry, I'm bad at this.
Yeah, trade
Jesus,
winds
are you
actually make a
familiar
lot
with
of
trade
sense.
winds?
Yeah,
Tell me
if
why.
you view them on the AE map, the azimuthal equidistant map, the trade winds actually make a lot of sense as to how they work. When you view them on the globe model, they're looking like they're doing those big W things and make zero sense whatsoever. I just say it's got to do with the path of the sun going around us. It's the sole source of energy that creates all our temperatures, all our seasons, and as it moves up to get further away, that's why it appears to be going north to create the northern summer. As it comes back down again until December 22nd, it appears to be going south, and therefore, because it's much closer, we have longer, hotter summers here in the south. I had all this written down in my slideshow presentation if you'd want to give me a few more minutes to finish it off. But you know, it's basically all done by the sun.
Okay, so when is the height of your summer down there? First of all, are you familiar with the term solstice and equinox?
Yes, absolutely, because my birthday is coming up on the winter solstice this June 22nd. So I've always taken a great interest in solstices and equinoxes. And as I said in part of my presentation, I have a diagram which shows exactly how equinoxes, solstices, and seasons occur, all basically based on the sun analemma and the way that the sun itself is moving up and down above the flat plane. So yes, I'm quite familiar with them. And when we see the equinox, that's from the analemma, that's the two crossover points, you know, the X marks the spot. The smaller side of the top part of the analemma only appears smaller because the sun is further away. That's when it peaks at June 22nd, and it reaches the bottom, whatever you call that, on December 22nd, which is your winter solstice. That's our summer solstice. And that's when the sun starts going back up again in its daily spiral. That's what creates our seasons. And because when it's nearer and closer, we've got the bigger part of the analemma in that outer side of the equator. That is why our summers are much longer and hotter, and why natural skin colours even show that the pale skin people come from the north, but the further south you go, the darker and darker skin colours naturally get.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a specific question concerning that right now. Is this thing possessed?
So do I.
I keep hearing growls. Do we need an exorcism?
That's Echo from Flat Earth Ozzy Jesus before he mutes his microphone. That's why I ask you all to mute when you're not talking. Please mute so that it does not echo back through your speakers.
Dr. Baum, once you ask your question, I have a few things I want to address to Ross myself.
All right. Well, I want to ask Flat Earth Jesus one quick question. Now, on June 21st, which is your winter solstice, right? If I go 1,000 miles, if I go 1,000 miles south of you or 1,000 miles north, Does that make a difference in temperature?
Yes, it will, because if you go north, you've got more direct sunlight because the sun appears to be going in a smaller circle, even though it still takes 24 hours to make a rotation. Because it's further away, it appears to make a smaller circle. So that 1,000 miles will mean you get more direct sunlight, which is diluted by the atmosphere. If you go further south, it's coming in at a more northerly angle, and so that dilutes the power of the sun much more through the atmosphere, and therefore it is much colder the further south you go in our winter.
Very well. Very well. Now, during your summer, if I go 1,000 miles south of you, at your summer solstice, if I go 1,000 miles south or 1,000 miles north, will that make a difference in the temperature?
I'm not sure that 1,000 miles would make that much difference. It does get very hot, so far as I know, in the southern parts of Australia, like Tasmania. In the summertime, they only have a fairly short summer, like it only lasts 6 to 8 weeks or something, but it does get very hot. But because the sun is basically following the path of the equator the whole time, even though it's much nearer, it doesn't necessarily give extra heat to the further south you go. You know, that's the limitations that we know of. Once you go too far south, you reach Antarctica, which we know is basically a frozen wasteland, even in summertime. So it does have limitations. So, yeah, I think if you went further north,
well, that's a good
you might want
point.
to go a few thousand
Let's go
miles
ahead
north to make it colder.
All right, you raised some good points. Let's see if Constable wishes to address any of them, and I'll go on mute again.
There's just one point that I want to address, and part of me is kind of wishing I had an azimuthal equidistant. Could you, did you pull up one of FLATURMANIA's model rendition of the AE project? I could explain the thing, just to explain the path of the sun, physical or portal. I just want to address to Ross. All right, you're seeing, no, back to like one of the clock ones. Okay, actually, that one right there. Keep it there. You see all the continents, right? You see the sun? No problem. In order to keep its east to west motion with the Earth to rise and set, it's going to have to move into a circle. Not see that at all in reality. We see it raise straight up, move in its normal straight line path, and then set right down. We don't see it do any form of arching. Secondly, I don't see how the sun in any way, shape, or form can actually set and form a proper horizon. This is just the basic problems of the geometry over a flat disk over a spheroid, Ross, and I would like to see you provide positive evidence of why we observe something that seems to more conform to a globular model instead of a flat disk.
Oh, so that's your question. Okay, well, you do actually see the sun going through an arc if you actually did have a camera on it and detected it all day. But it's such a slim little arc from your point of view, because you have to remember your horizon on both sides between sunrise and sunset is still only about a few miles away. So the portion that you're actually seeing is a really small portion. And as I said before, you're seeing it going in this sort of pyramid line, which is what perspective causes it to do. Just as if, say, you walked up to a tall building, you would see way up there really high. But if you walked a few blocks away, you'd see it way down there over low. The building hasn't changed size and you're still at the same elevation. It's just a matter of perspective that causes this rising and setting, even though it's constantly at the same height. So again, with this angular size, as I said, it's an apparition created by the atmosphere itself, which even though the atmosphere appears low at the horizon, it's still the same height as it is when it's above you. It just appears different because this is just your point of view. So what was your final point there? I couldn't quite get what the question was. If you don't mind repeating it, if you're capable. No, you're not there.
Just give me a second.
I think he muted his camera because his kids were right behind him. While he's getting his stuff together, Flat Earth Jesus, you agree that
No,
at
I got my
night
stuff
it gets
together, and it
dark?
wasn't my kid. It was
All right.
it was my sister. Okay, I would like to
sorry about
address
that.
what Ross said. Okay, so you say that about the horizon, but what happens when we actually raise our elevation on a plane or a drone that can move up at a sufficient altitude, and we still don't see any form of arching? Also, if it's traveling in that circle, then we should be able to bring the sun back into view. But no matter how much we have with a camera and how high we go up, we can't get the sun back because it's blocked by the curvature of the Earth.
Well, that's blatantly false. There's many examples of people sending a
How is
drone
that
up to
false?
get
Hold
multiple
on.
sunsets.
I gotta say how that's
They
false.
get multiple sunsets. They get multiple sunsets by going
Constable,
up higher.
allow him to
They're able to
answer.
see further. Yeah, we've seen plenty of evidence of them showing the sun. It hasn't gone over any curvature. It's just been obscured by your nearby horizon. And as you gain elevation, you can see further. As you gain more elevation, you can see further again. And eventually you'll reach a point, if you got as high as the moon, the sun would never set. Obviously, drones don't go quite that high. But yeah, you're not going to see any angular change so much over such a short distance. I mean, the sun is going on a 25,000-mile path around us. You really think you're going to see that in that tiny little, maybe 50 miles tops you might be able to see from your point of view? Maybe 100 miles if you're really lucky with a great vantage point. You're not going to see much change in the circular path anyway over a 25,000-mile path.
Again, if it's still traveling over and never really setting, you saw the presentation. It's never going to really prat. Again, how can it be obscured if it's constantly over a flat surface, even over water? Like a horizon over the water, which you have said always finds its level.
Okay, well, if you'd like to load up my images again and just go forward through them, I'll show you a picture of how perspective works. If there's time to,
you still have
get
yet
back
to
into them.
disprove the law of
If you can go back
perspective.
forwards, yeah, that's Helios, sun worship. But I think it was previous to that, the perspective ones, or maybe it's after. That shows how when something gets further away, it appears to make smaller circles. So when the sun gets higher, that's the sun one and the sun analemma. If we keep on going for another couple more perspective ones. This one here shows how everything above the eye converges down, everything below the eye converges upwards. So because of your viewing height, that's where your limitation point is. Your eyes on the horizon, where the sun rises, where the sun sets. That's your limitation of view because of your viewing height. As you go up higher, you extend your range of view, but anything that is higher than that and gets further than that point will be obscured by it. Bottom first, as it gets further distance. That's why
So you're saying
that's why the sun disappears.
So you're saying we can trust our senses, and now we can't trust our senses, is what I'm getting at. And second, and you actually think those parallel lines would converge. You realize that we can use, say, a camera to see further along.
Yeah. We'll go to the next image, and we'll see that. Show the next image, and we'll see exactly how a camera works.
Well, actually, I've got a question about this image that I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, Jesus. And sure. I wanna get input from Constable on this too. Now, if I look out there, I see the bridge converging towards eye level in the center of the photo, right? And I see water underneath it converging in the center of the photo. Then I see what looks like a line, like a horizontal line, where those all converge, and then I see sky above it. Can anything from the water, floating in the water, ever appear in the sky?
Well, no, because it's on the water.
If I had a beach ball floating in the water, is there any distance away from me that beach ball could be, and it would be up in the sky?
It'd be very difficult to see. I mean, you can use, say, a tall ship. You will see the masts. Once the bottom of the boat's obscured, you will still see the masts because they haven't obviously gone over any curvature. They're not tilting away over this curve that somehow people fool themselves into believing exists. But your beach ball, I think you need a very good telescope or zoom camera to be able to see at that distance.
But we don't.
So let me ask you this then. along that same line. If the Goodyear blimp was up in the sky going down over those two bridges, would it ever appear to go below the water at any distance?
It can be obscured. Yeah, of course. Just like the sun does. Eventually it'll be sufficiently far enough away that that obscurity point will block it from view, bottom first, because it's too far away. It's just how perspective works.
Tell me what the obscurity point is.
Well, it varies depending on your height. If you're 6 foot above sea level, the obscurity point is roughly 3 miles. But if you get a bit higher, it's going to be, it'll be a lot further. It just depends on your viewing height. And that's what determines your obscurity point. That's why when you're up in a plane, you can see much, much further. When you're down on the ground, you can, as I say, at sea level, you can see 3 miles. If you laid down on the ground, say doing a push-up and looked out, you'd probably see 30 feet. That's how perspective works. Everything below you rises to eye level. Everything above you sinks down to eye level.
Constable, would you care to address that, please?
Yeah. Do you have any mathematics to actually prove that, or any actual forms to actually prove that? Because the current law of angular perspective shows something disappearing in totality. There is no magical point where it just starts disappearing from the bottom up from whatever observations flat earthers tend to claim, but I don't see any form of mathematics or explanations of the human eye that can actually prove this, or even how a camera can observe this same, still waiting for some mathematical proof.
Well, once again, that's blatantly false, because one of the greatest claims of every glober is that we can see ships disappearing bottom first as they go over the curvature. As we can see, if you gain elevation, it hasn't gone over any curvature. There's no curvature there to begin with. It's just the limits of your height range of view, and as you get higher, you will be able to see the rest of the boat, should you be able to. So there's no strict mathematical formula, because it varies with each individual situation, depending what you're looking at and how high you are.
Jesus, would you care to expand on why gaining elevation seems to make a difference?
Because you can see further. Simple. You've increased your angular view. Like if you're looking across, this is the example, 1 in 3,000. If you're 1 millimeter high and you can see 3 meters across, that's the 6 foot to 3 mile basically equivalent. If you increase that to 2 millimeters, you're going to see even further. Increase it to say 10 millimeters. The further higher you go, the further you can see, because of angular resolution. It's not anything to do with the things that you see shrinking in the distance in totality is simply because of distance diminution as they get further away across a flat surface. If you're able to see them to that point where they disappear, it's because they're so far away, the light can no longer make them out.
And still no actual form.
Constable, yours.
Okay. Still no actual mathematics, just more invoking something. And I know exactly what you were talking about. And the person who tried to prove this little fact used this with a book in a hallway. But the fact is that when he was doing this experiment, I'm not going to name names, Nathan Oakley, he had that book in a different hallway at a completely different level, lower than the hallway where he was making his observation. So that was genuinely dishonest on his part, and he didn't even provide any proper forms of scaling to provide this to the distances of, say, a boat going over the horizon. Something that I still don't see how it could be angularly possible on the flat Earth. Because we do have telescopes and we do have very powerful cameras with powerful zooms, but I think I want to just move past this point so we don't just spend the rest of the debate talking about this, because there is something I want to just completely address with you, Ross, and that is, again, the quartz moon, if I'm allotted to.
Yeah. I was hoping we'd get back to that.
May I?
Knock yourself out, Chief.
Okay, so let's just first look at the buoyant force of hydrogen. The buoyant force of hydrogen is 1.114 kilograms per meter, or 1 mole of gas for every 22.3 liters. And this is giving you the benefit of the doubt of giving you a quartz moon with a diameter of 50 miles with a thickness of 2 centimeters at its walls, and its weight would come out to 43,1 127,749.76 pounds. And I'm going to say that again, Ross. That is 2 centimeters thick. And here's the issue you got to deal with buoyant force. If the walls of your hollow quartz moon are too thin, that bastard's going to collapse on over its own weight. It will not be able to hold itself up without any form of internal support with walls that thin. Too thick, and there's no way the hydrogen is ever going to get it off of the ground. And you said that the moon is only in the stratosphere and it's 50 miles in actual size. Well, let me just get my meteorology textbook so I can address the actual height of stratosphere, which about 10 kilometers or 10,000 meters, if I'm reading this correctly. And miles up in the sky, we would be able to measure its angular, again using the proper law of angular perspective. And we do tend to have flights at altitude, and at no point have they ever reported the moon within the stratosphere. Do you have any form of reports from aircraft that have reported the moon at a much closer distance than has been claimed on the globe model?
Well, no, in actual fact, I think everything about the moon is quite an unknown. We're still guessing as to what it is, where it came from, how it was made. I've given some of my best theories as to how it got there. As to its actual height, when we see some of these high altitude balloon footage that goes up and sees the sun at roughly camera level, when it's at about 120,000 feet, the moon actually rarely ever seems visible at all. Occasionally I've seen this tiny little dot. So I've got no real answer as to how it's viewed, what it is, what it's made of. But I would suggest that it's not just because of helium or hydrogen as part of its constitution. There's also some sort of electromagnetic force, which is to do with the nature of our saltwater oceans. And that's why somehow there's some sort of repellent force as well, which is why it drives the tides around in front of the moon. Now, it doesn't get pulled by the moon whatsoever. We've got 2 tides per day. So it's somehow connected with the tides, the way the tides work. I'm still working on it myself. I don't know exactly, but the sun and the moon seem to be repelling the water in front of it, which sort of keeps them buoyant in some fashion. So it's not just helium or hydrogen. Again, if we were looking at it from the global perspective, we would think that when we've got a new moon phase, you've got the sun and the moon pulling together on our tides, should be creating the highest tides. But what we find with our king tides, especially around the equinoxes, which we've just gone past our Easter equinox, but we're still going to celebrate Easter in another week's time, I believe. That's when basically the sun and moon are most balanced, and when they're opposite each other during the full moon phase, that's when we get our king tides, because they're obviously at their most equal sort of balanced force, pushing the tides most efficiently. So, the whole concept of gravity and pulling causing tides is clearly wrong. The high tide always comes before the moon approaching, as I've witnessed personally multiple times. Now, I spend a lot of time, or have spent a lot of time, down at the beach observing the moon, especially full moon. I always go down to watch it rising when the sun is setting. It only ever rises that one side of the month. Yep. I know I'm raving a bit here, but yeah, we're talking about the moon.
What instrument measurement used to substantiate any claims you had? And just as a word of advice, Ross, again, you're using the argument from incredulity. You're just saying, we don't know what it is. And if you're just saying, I don't know what it is, but you're still asserting that it's quartz and helium or hydrogen and such, you can't do that without any proper mathematical proofs or any form of way to replace what we currently have. I just have mathematical proofs of how the moon could not form in the way you are, quote unquote, theorizing. And you've provided no real forms of mathematics or any ways that that works around this huge problem of collapsing over its own weight. And you keep talking about its whole gravity and how it's how the atmosphere sorts in different densities, but what exact force is causing the heavier air molecules to sort down to the lower areas? Because there has to be a force pushing everything upwards, and actually, going back to one of Dr. Bob's questions about his tablet and the image of General MacArthur. I don't know the exact mechanics, but I'm guessing that it's it'll flip due to the tablet's orientation with the direction of gravity. Correct, Dr. Bob?
Well, there's an accelerometer in the phone, and I'm curious as to how that interacts with, I mean, what force is causing that?
Yeah,
What
well, as I've been
acceleration
saying
is
all
the
along,
phone undergoing?
as I've been saying all along, there is no forces required when a more dense mass displaces a less dense mass. So when it comes to gaseous density, it's very subtle. So you're not going to get this huge displacement and have all the oxygen to sit at one level at the bottom. They're basically mixed the whole time, but the overall effect is that the heavier mass displaces the lesser mass, and therefore everything sort of seeks its level. That's why we've got it might be a few miles height of elevation before you're going to notice any difference in the level of oxygen gas. So it's not a huge difference at all. It's just a minor displacement until you reach, say, 5 miles higher, and then you might start to want to think you've got a gas bottle with you. Yeah, it's all pretty.
Okay, so
straightforward.
Flat Earth Jesus, let me ask you a quick question, if I could. Would you agree that a cotton ball is less dense than a marble?
Yes, I would.
Okay. If I put a cotton ball on the right and a marble on the left on the table, will they move?
Not if they're on the table, no. Not if you don't blow a
Okay,
wind
how
at
about,
them.
all right, how about if I put the cotton ball on top of the marble or the marble on top of the cotton ball? Which, will either of them flip?
Not really. Your marble's going to sink into it a bit because the cotton ball is mostly full of air, so it's going to displace some of that air and sink into it.
The cotton ball wouldn't seek to go to the top. How about a glass that is half full of water and half full of oil? Will that move in a predictable way?
Well, yeah, we know that oil is less dense than water, so it will float on it. How about I ask you a question? How big does this glass have to be before one edge can be lower than the table and it will still hold water?
Great question. You want to address that, Constable?
Repeat the question.
How big does a glass of water have
I
to
asked,
be before one edge can be lower than the table and it will still hold water? Because that's what the globe model says must be happening. At what point can it exist where it's lower than the table?
I've never actually heard that one before. I'm not gonna lie.
Right, guys, we're coming up on 2 minutes left. Do you want to start wrapping things up?
Yeah, I guess.
So just
logic
maybe
once again.
just is there any final arguments either of you want to put out?
Well, yeah, it was talking about the moon, so I thought I'd quickly address that. As I was saying, that it's an unknown quantity. We don't know exactly what it's made of, whether it be quartz, whether it be obsidian, whether it be some glass-like material. It's unknown, but to say it's transparent, no, I've always maintained it's semi-transparent, or you might say from the other side, semi-opaque. So when the sunlight shines on it, it basically glows where it's lit, but the rest of it doesn't glow all the way through. And there is some sort of discrepancy with the moon phases where the lit phases seem to be greater than the unlit phases by about 10%. And that's probably because of this semi-opaqueness, where it still glows a bit further into the edges. Sunlight reaches through, but it doesn't reach all the way through. So that's my take on the moon so far.
Want to quickly respond to that,
then I
Constable?
guess
You got
it's my
about 30 seconds.
Wait, what am I saying? Okay, so basically, here's what I basically learned with talking about Ross. He never addressed my point about artillery, which again I said starts at 1 kilometer, which implies that I can go either. The moon is transparent, but still has phases because reasons. He did not in any way properly address my question about the sun, and generally did not really provide any form of solid evidence to replace the current law of angular perspective. So basically what I have found here is that a bunch of assertions with negative evidence about the globe with no real solid positive evidence. Nothing properly measured, nothing properly addressed, nothing properly rebutted on my end. So all I can say to this Ross Thatcher is that this is once again another abyss on your end. I tried really hard to.
Well, he
We'll
went
leave it
over
there.
for a couple of minutes. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and give Jesus just a second to respond.
That's exactly what I was
Let's
going
give
to say.
him, like,
Just say to
20
Jesus, you've
seconds.
got a couple
Oh, wait a
of...
minute. I thought this was the outro. Oh, God damn it. I'm an idiot.
No, I was just saying it. Just
Well,
finish it. All right, I'll tell you what.
I was
Go
gonna
on,
say,
Thomas.
Flat Earth Jesus, he's gonna have last words, and then we got to do super chats. So
Just before that, Bob, do you just want to give a couple of minutes on what you thought about the debate?
Well, yeah, actually I do. I think that both sides were well prepared to come in here and both made some very good arguments. At least they presented their case well. Now, whether I agree with either case is immaterial. I do want to compliment both the candidates tonight for being very civil. They let each other talk. They allowed people to complete their thoughts without interruptions, and I really appreciate that. At least you had a bit of a conversation. It was a little bit slower down than some of these other ones that we get, but there was a definite going back and forth that I really liked. I want to thank you very much for coming in, and you guys did great.
Thank you very much, Bob. Right, so should we let them both just have final words and then do super chats?
yeah, I mean that sounds good. And sorry, I was a little out of it there right near the end. So yeah, I would say
cool.
final words, and then
Well, I
super
think
chat.
Constable has kind of said what he wanted to at the end there. Have you got anything that you want to add, Constable, just quickly?
Yeah, and I would be dishonest if I said I was not in any ways at some point disappointed with my own personal performance at any point, because I feel like while I did do a good job of being optimal with the collective, I didn't have enough exact evidence to perfectly or at least like perfect knowledge of the evidence to properly rebuttal some of Flat Earth Jesus's points. But I believe I made a good argument with showing that it is the general collective of evidence that must be rebutted, and not just one particular smoking gun that the Flat Earth movement is trying so desperately to find. Was I perfect? No, this is only my third time doing it, but I feel like I do agree with Dr. Bob's analysis that we were at least being able to be civil about our disagreements.
All right, thank you for that, Constable. Ross, would you like to just give your final words quickly? Just make it short, if you don't mind.
First of all, I just want to thank Bob for moderating. I think you did a good and fair job. I have a feeling that Constable Conspicuously sort of failed miserably. I addressed everything that he brought up, and I gave a reasonable and logical flat earth explanation for each and every single thing. He's tried to claim that I didn't on many of those things, which I did, in fact, do. And I think this is a big win for the flat earth and logic and truth. So thanks for having me, and have a good one.
Logic and truth.
Okay,
You're half with the logic and truth part.
Douglas, are you going to do super chats?
well, I can't. I don't have access to the super chat list.
Dave's got them, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Dave, do you want to do the super chat?
I gotta do it unless Kyle and Steve are here. So, yeah, I'll do them. So, Greg Ryan says, "No, Kyle, I brought Cinnamon Toast Crunch for nothing." Brian Peck says,
Sorry,
Ross would acknowledge you don't know the difference relative speed and average speed, as evidenced by your 2 trains example. Kuyasa says, what's keeping us from seeing that big old snow mountain around the Earth with a telescope if the Earth is flat? Antonio Arroyas, Flat Earth Jesus, can you make your first slide public domain? Flat Earth Jesus, is it okay if he takes us, like, he can go back and get that from the show? And your first slide?
Sorry, I just had myself muted there. I was trying to find the live feed, but yeah, what was that about my first flight? I'm still working on it.
Antonio Arroyas wants to know if you can make that public domain. In other words, can he use your image? Is basically what he's asking. Okay. So
sure, go ahead.
Antonio, just go to the beginning of the stream and do a screen cap and grab it. Snyder, why does every flurf say they are open-minded and only care about the truth, but will eventually hide evidence or deny irrefutable evidence the Earth is flat? Like Bob Noodle and Dism, for example. I think they meant to say round there.
Mm-hmm. I think they just detected motion of the stars. That was all they detected, not motion of the Earth.
Anyway.
Can you explain how they can detect motion of the stars even after this?
Let's not get back into that right now. That is for another day.
Sorry.
I guess I have many things I would like to say on that, but we have another show to get to as well.
Yes, yeah. I need to blaze through these. So to Aussie, if you believe a flat plane, then you've been denying that things fall down for no reason. Schrodinger's cat says, Flat Earth Jesus has reached maximum stupid. My blood alcohol content is also maxed. Have flat earthers simply stopped even trying to make sense? Ghostly Enigma says, wow, we have blackout on BS idiot bingo. Okay. That's funny. Timothy Judge says, this makes data entry not so bad. Blair Sadowitz says, how do flat earthers account for the radar horizon? Similarly, how do flat earthers account for skywave propagation? See Wikipedia, etc. Mark Beiser says, how can Flat Earth Aussie Jesus' rectum have enough room to pull all this out of his anal dimensional portal? Luke Filewalker, we're spinning. Whee! Okay. Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, look up. The reasoning is in the sky. Stephen Steen, uploaded proof video of density FEAG talked about. Okay. The Athens 619 says, Flat Earth, trust your senses. Blind person, Earth's not real. That's funny, too. Carlos Pagan, as a direct TV technician, I can say that you are wrong. Okay. Antonio Arroyas again. SimCity is a game developed on a flat plane. Maxis knew the Earth was flat in the early days of PC gaming. The same people making the fake photos also make the games. Luke Filewalker again. How does Flat Earth Jesus explain the moons around Jupiter? Not sure we have time to go into that.
Does he want an explanation for that? When you're looking at lights in the sky, all you're seeing is lights in the sky. You're not proving that they're moons. Okay? For all we know, these celestials are some sort of other lights that we don't know what they are, and they've got their own familiar lights that go around them. But there's no proof that they're terra firma, so that's jumping to conclusions and stretching the truth just to confirm to your preconceived biases of what you think we do.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt here. You can literally see moons and shit with fucking telescopes. Galileo did it, so I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Shush.
Shush. Joshy Neurotic says, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, explain how the dichotomy of seasons summer in North America while being winter in Australia work on a flat Earth model, one that can be tested and verified. Okay, and we kind of already went into that, and
yeah,
we certainly don't have time to go into full depth on that right now.
Direct sunlight is the simple answer. Direct sunlight causes the seeds.
Okay. Demonic Davros says, a cyclone moves northward on the east coast and south on the west coast due to rotation. Rebot 1. Hold on, how does Flat Earthers' satellites get out of the atmosphere if there's a container made of frozen gas keeping it in? Demonic Devros again. Holy facepalm, GE. Jane Doe. Excellent job moderating, Dr. Bob. Hope you will be moderating more often. And let's see if there's any more. Let me refresh. No, that's it.
Okay. Well, are we gonna end this and start a new stream?
Yeah, I would need to set up and do a new stream. So
Yeah.
we'll go out. We'll be back in probably 10 minutes, folks. 15 minutes. Yeah, let's make it 15 to make sure we get everybody in.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. That was Constable Conspicuous and Flat Earth Jesus. Thank you guys for an amicable debate, and thank you, Bob, for coming on to moderate. Like they said, we'll be back in about 15 minutes. No worries. Yeah, we're back in about 15 minutes. Anything you want to say, Godless?
No, I'm good. This was interesting. Interesting.
That's trademarked by journalism. You know that, right?
No Godless Engineer outro.
Oh yes, so everybody, if you're watching, hit that smash that like button, leave a comment if you will, and also make sure you stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.
Thanks again.